Welcome to the Dear Katie podcast. This is Katie Kessner.
This is Claire Kaplan.
And I'm Emily Wang.
And we want to welcome and thank everyone for being here today. We're especially honored to have a wonderful guest, Julie Wallach, and she's going to share her story with us and provide some information. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you so much, Claire.
So can you just give us a little bit of information about who you are and something about your life?
I am a 54-year-old. I am an incest survivor and sexual assault survivor. So I have been healing for decades now.
Tell us about your story. What brings you to the Dear Katie podcast?
Well, today I'm going to share about medical sexual assault that happened to me in the late 90s and how surviving incest really made that so much more impactful in my life in healing from trauma in that way, having come out of childhood that was so difficult and then moving into getting sober, having flashbacks of those events. And then later, within the same decade, I was sexually assaulted by a doctor at UCLA, Dr. James Heaps. And he did irreparable harm to my body and to my spirit. And so talking through the healing process of that and also what happened and going unheard and having my story diminished, and then later having an opportunity and a platform to really speak out and seek justice.
That's a lot, Julie. And I know you're a warrior in this fight to raise the voices of survivors. I was wondering if you could start by telling us the background, the story of your interaction or this experience with this doctor. And how did you meet him? What was the circumstance? And what happened immediately after? Can you tell us about that?
I can. And thank you for asking. And thanks so much for having me here today to express the deeper feelings that went on and also what happened as I healed and was able to really kind of have a voice in all of this. But initially, I had an irregular pap smear. My OBGYN referred me to Dr. Heaps. He was world-renowned gynecological oncologist at UCLA in the medical building on campus. And there was something about that felt like, okay, I can definitely trust this guy. I mean, I've got UCLA as the umbrella under which he works and it didn't even occur to me that he would do anything to me that was inappropriate or abusive. But I went to him very vulnerable. I was really scared because I wanted to get pregnant soon after that. And I started going to him. And when I was in the room with him, he, this was what we now know is a red flag, right? At the time, it didn't really occur to me, but there was a nurse in the room initially, and he sent her out of the room. And that, and again, I refer back to being molested and having all sorts of things happen to me as a child. And that feeling of like, do I have a right to say anything here? Do I have a voice? I felt like my inner voice would be screaming at times and my outer voice was silent. And so I'm in the room and she leaves and then we're together in this room and he, it's always hard to decide how much I want to share from just the experience of being in that room and having him pry my legs open. He used equipment that was inappropriate for the exams that he was giving. He told me that I had to come back frequently, more frequently than was medically recommended. He would say things to me about the way I looked and, when you stand up, I want to see how tall you are. Oh my God, you're so tall. Wow. Commenting on my looks. Your husband's so lucky. I mean, the things he said coupled with the things he was doing were, it's that moment when assault happens, there's this, shock of and disbelief. This absolutely cannot be happening. And my experience has been that that's followed almost immediately by dissociation. And I'm going to leave my body now because I have to in order to protect myself. And I'm going to comply. And I'm going to make sure that whatever I do, I don't piss this guy off. And I make sure that he's happy so that I'm safe. And it's so distorted that even saying that aloud is like, really? I'm going to protect this guy's safety? But I was really trying to protect my own.
Yes. If I could step in here for a second, because you mentioned a couple of really important points. One is, that you were an incest survivor, so your body is already trained to respond in a certain manner to one of these kinds of offenses, or maybe sexual insults is sometimes another way to say it, these assaults. The other thing that you mentioned that's really important is the process that you talked about. When it happens, is the shock and the disbelief, and then there's dissociation, and then there's silence. That's such a great description of that process. And I'm wondering, looking back and how I'm sure you've like teased this apart and examined this a lot, in your healing process. From your experience, is this typically the way survivors respond? And I know that some of the answers to this, but I think for our listeners, it'd be important for them to hear that, whether that's something unusual, not typical, usual, whatever it is, from your experience.
Right. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I've gone through this more than once, and I can only say, and, do we have scientific data to back me? Yeah, probably. But the qualitative sort of experience of being in a room, and let's just take us back to that doctor's office. I'm in a doctor's office. I'm looking up at fluorescent lights, feet are in stirrups. My legs are spread. He's touching me without gloves. I'm having this like, my body is being invaded by this man on every level, verbally, the sexual, what he was saying to me, what he was doing to my body at the same time that he was talking to me. And I'm sort of like, it's almost like this feeling of going deaf in a moment. I can't describe what it's like to not be able to hear, but I can only say that there's that sort of feeling of like my hands are covering my ears, right? And that experience, I've spoken with other survivors who have said, oh my God, you described it so perfectly.
Yeah.
And it's horrendous that that's the experience that so many survivors feel. I do think, depending on the circumstances, it might change a little bit. There might be someone who says, no, stop, don't. There might be someone else who is crying. But I would say that generally, yeah, that seems to be the sequence.
And when you talked about dissociating, you talk about like having your hands over your ears so you can't really hear, or it's muffled perhaps. Did you also feel that you left your body at all?
Right. So more specifically to each of those things, yes. In terms of dissociating, what I've experienced, and because I've done healing work over 30 years plus now, I can stay almost a little bit connected to myself when I'm going to a dissociative state. So I can share about it from like this sort of maybe 5,000 foot view. And what I feel starts to happen is I can't handle this input. I can't handle what's coming at me. And I then feel like there's a numbness throughout my body, and I might go into sort of a freeze state where I'm staring off into space. I feel like I'm away from my body. There have been other times where I have witnessed myself from a distance, looking back at myself, but with no emotional connection. Mm-hmm. So the emotional experience just goes away, and it becomes like for me, it's been a lot of, there's fight, flight, freeze, fawn. I have done a lot of freezing and fawning over the years as a way to survive. So my body will totally just go into almost a catatonic state where I can't move. I can look at my body and not be able to move, look at my hand and not be able to reach for something. So that's also part of the dissociation, is like, I'm not in control of my body. I want to just get quiet for a moment and really connect. Dissociating has been a place where I feel like, wow, I wish I could just go back there sometimes because I don't want to feel this. When I've been able to connect to the feelings of what has happened to me and the shame I felt, and I'll get into more of the emotional stuff, but I've almost wished that I could just go back to that place of like, I'm not really here.
Because it's safer emotionally.
Yeah. I mean, this is what it's like to not feel the feelings. Then there's a healing process that for me has involved feeling the feelings and releasing, right? And so that's got a whole other bucket of, oof, this is intense and I don't want to feel this. And boy, it sure would be nice if I could just check the hell out right now.
Mm-hmm.
There is that element to it for sure.
I think I definitely connect with you on that sort of feeling like you're out of it. It's like holding a breath almost, like you're not breathing, you're not there. And I think your description of it was truly very, very accurate, at least for my personal experience. I am a little bit curious about I think that part of that dissociation is when you go through the healing process is that you're in a little bit of denial that because I didn't feel anything, that this wasn't real. This was something that didn't happen or didn't affect me as much as it truly did. And so I'm wondering if you kind of went through anything similar, or if what the process really was of, confronting what happened and pulling yourself out of that disengagement.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear that you can relate, and thank you for sharing that with me. And such a great question. I pictured a bridge from dissociation, disbelief, denial, and I'll say dumbing down the event. This didn't happen. I'm so full of it. This did not happen. And really perseverating on that and really holding that and looping on that. I'm a liar. I'm a total liar. This did not happen. And the denial coupled with the diminishment, I'm blaming myself now for what the perpetrator did. And I'll get into the shame piece. But so there we are standing and looking at this bridge. And then I'm moving on the bridge. I'm stopping along the way. I'm saying, oh, I'm going to eat ice cream now. I'm going to drink alcohol now. I'm going to check out however I can. But I'm moving across the bridge. And as I do, and those were coping. Those were ways that I coped, and I got sober. And so that's another conversation. But as I'm moving from disbelief, denial, diminishment, dissociation, I'm moving into, wait a minute, it did happen. This happened to me. Not only did this happen, which is its own realization, but then it happened to me. It happened in my body. And oh my, coming out of that state into the reality of it and the validation from within is incredibly powerful and also heartbreaking, and so hard that, as I said, as I'm walking over that bridge, I'm like, I gotta stop. This is too much. It's too intense. And I can't fully take all of this in one therapy session, in one moment with myself. This is going to take a series of those. It's going to take needing a break in between, and then eventually kind of moving off that bridge and into a place of, yeah, this happened. And see, I'm starting to dissociate right now. So interesting. What was I just saying? I'll give it to you in real time. I started to feel oh, wait, I crossed that bridge. And I will immediately go back to Dr. Heaps didn't do anything to me. Oh. I'm a liar. I'm a liar.
Wow.
As I'm sitting here, I can have, and I've healed so much, and I still will have a moment of whoa, my body is saying, this is a lot. This is a lot.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute. Tell the truth about where you are right now. Talk about it. Open it up. Be real about it. Don't just try to keep talking, right?
Yeah.
Take a moment on that bridge and say, hold on. This is really difficult. You're bringing up a lot of stuff here. It's okay, honey. And I can talk myself through that and love myself through this. And now I'm starting to get tender and feel softer and come back into my body. So amazing that it just happened right now, right?
And thank you for taking us through that process too. That was really profound. Thank you for that. So I want to get back to a little bit more about the actual story. But so for you, working your way through a dissociative moment is by talking through it. Do you have other strategies that you use to bring yourself back?
Yeah, mostly it's using the compassion that I've developed over the years to really connect and say, it's okay, sweetheart. Like really to talk to myself, not just to talk to myself, but to talk to myself in a really loving, sweet, maternal, comforting, supportive, protective voice. Like no one can hurt you now.
Sounds like you're parenting yourself that way.
Just not with the parents I had. Exactly. Yeah. But yes, it is. There's just such a sweetness to it. And, I'll say this, it's a good time to kind of say this and then we can, transition from this. But when I speak about what happened to me and I speak with other survivors, I say that we're standing in tender solidarity and that our hands, if it feels safe to even metaphorically hold hands and, create just this beautiful circle of survivors standing together in tender solidarity. I am one of those survivors. So I am standing with myself in tender solidarity. And then collectively, there are others who are sharing their experience and their healing. And so together we do that. But I have to do that for myself and with myself, whether I'm dissociating or I'm enraged or whatever emotion might be coming up. That's how I've been able to really reconnect.
I just have to say that's such a fantastic description of what it's like to really be kind to yourself and re-engage with yourself, that at a certain point you have to view yourself as another survivor to get over the sort of shame and self-blame that I think a lot of us experience. That if we look at ourselves with that sort of tender love that we do with each other, then it's a lot easier to kind of believe ourselves even. And so I really want to emphasize, especially for our listeners, that is a really great way to kind of re-engage with yourself as well, is that you are just another survivor like everybody else. And we all exist here to support each other with tender love.
Thank you for that.
So that was such a great conversation. But getting back to sort of the actual, you had this horrible experience with this doctor. You said he asked you to come back on repeated occasions. Did you, or did you figure out no, this isn't happening? I mean, how'd that go?
Well, so I went back to him 4 times and he was telling me from a medical perspective, you need this to happen. Now, when I first left the first visit, I remember leaving the office and getting in the elevator and I was surrounded by people and it's busy and I've got to go to the parking garage and pay my parking and drive home. All of these things happen in this crazy sequence after being abused. Okay, now I've got to get up and make dinner, whatever the thing is, right? That we're doing right after it happens. It doesn't get talked about a whole lot. So I left and I was in that dissociative sort of checked out, all of that shock and disbelief state. But I was also I want to get pregnant. What if he's right? What if I'm supposed to do this? Believing the perpetrator was part of what I had experienced as a child, depending on, trusting, believing. And the split too, and this is where shame, I think, really rears itself, or it did for me. The split between this person is abusing me right now, and this person is someone I'm supposed to trust and I'm depending on. And how do I reconcile that? Now, as a child, we know that's a different conversation than we're having today. So I'm an adult. I'm in my late 20s, and I'm still healing from that experience of being abused. And that's where I went back to, right? Like the traumatic after effects are lasting. And so what I had healed from was sort of like, did it go out the window? No, with my childhood experiences. But I went right back into, I am dependent upon and must trust this person. So it took a few visits to get to a place of like, wait a minute, something's really not okay here. And coming to in that way was part of that process for me. Now, I will share with you that I went to the California Medical Board at that time. I walked out of the office and I never went back. Went to the California Medical Board, went to UCLA, called incessantly. I need to speak with someone. I need to find out what I can do. What kind of recourse do I have? What supports do I have in place? Calls were ignored. They'll call you back. Sorry, they're at a meeting. Sorry, they're at lunch, blah, blah, blah. I go to the California Medical Board. They're obligated to open a case, but it just fizzled out. And they said they found no evidence, and whatever it was that they said was dismissing, and it was over. Case closed. And so I felt like I had pursued justice and was trying to protect other women and speak out, as I did after my father abused me and I started having flashbacks later. I did end up speaking out about my father, and I thought, I gotta say something. Yeah. And then when it fell on deaf ears, I was so defeated and so sad and felt so deeply alone and ashamed and grossed out and all the things. And so, why did I go so many times? Why didn't I say something sooner? What could I have done? And I didn't have a tremendous amount of support outside of, in my family system. So I didn't pursue anything further.
And sorry for interrupting, but remind us what year this was.
So this was 1998.
98. Okay.
And over 20 years passed, and I was scrolling Instagram early one morning, and I came across a paid ad, my algorithm, as they say. And it was a paid ad. A law firm had said, "Were you sexually abused by Dr. James Heaps?" And when I tell you, that vibrational shaking that, they say animals do and we do to release trauma from our bodies, I started to shake uncontrollably. I was sobbing from my toes, guttural tears. I could not stop crying. And all of the years of feeling like nobody cared, and maybe it didn't even happen, but certainly nobody cared that it did, if it did. So I called that law firm. Yeah. And, now we're in 2019. And the first thing that my lawyer, who I just adore so much because of this and for so many other reasons, the first thing he asked me was, "Do you have a therapist?" And I was like, wow, you mean to tell me this guy cares that if I have a therapist? And he said, "And if you don't, you need to get one today."
Right.
And it was so profound and beautiful. And it started the process of being heard and believed and validated in a way that I had never experienced before in all of the ways that I had been abused. So it was a tremendous healing process in that regard. And I will say, he said at that point in 2019, there were maybe 30 other women who had come forward. And by the time this case settled, there were over 400 who came forward. that's, not including.
Sounds like the doctor at USC, same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Very, very similar.
Wow.
I really want to applaud you for the fact that, after 20 years that you were able to sort of, even if you weren't listened to so long ago, that eventually you were able to speak that truth. And now he's in prison, which is, I think, fantastic that at the very least, I think that there was some sort of public reckoning for what happened. And I think it's fantastic that you were able to share that even 20 years later, and the world did something about it. So I just really wanted to say that that's such a fantastic, even if it was late, even if it was perhaps not enough, but it was something.
Well, I would love to speak to that. Yes, thank you for that. And I feel like these are the parts that I've teased out as I've healed. Where did it come from within me to say, I'm going to pursue this? I'm going to, I wasn't heard. I wasn't believed. I was ignored. It caused probably thousands of other women to be abused. What was it about my experience at that time in 2019 that said, you know what? I'm going to pull some kind of healing from myself to speak. And I ended up speaking in front of the California Senate and the Judiciary Committee during the pandemic, virtually in favor of a bill to lift the statute of limitations for hundreds of us, including myself. And it was a feeling of like, one of the threads in my life is that I want the truth to be told. I want to hear it. I want it to be vocal and verbalized, and sometimes maybe screamed and sometimes softly spoken.
Mm-hmm.
But I want the truth to be told. There is a sense of injustice that I feel runs through just from a societal level and a macro level, and then in my own life at a macro micro level. And I want to be the one who lays my head on my pillow at night and says, I told the truth. Now, have I lied in my life? Absolutely. Is that, is it an ideal? Yes. But when it comes to this, it's like, I have a voice. I can articulate myself really well. And if that's what I've got, and that's one of my gifts, and I'm bold, I'm going to use this and I'm going to go for it. And I did. And it was incredibly empowering. And it was also exhausting. And I was sure many times throughout the process that it was all a bunch of BS and it didn't really happen. And I was lying to myself. And all of those things happened. There were times I couldn't, take a shower or look in the mirror, and the shame came back up. He irreparably harmed my body. And I was like, did he though? And then I had to remember, yeah, he did. I couldn't have natural childbirth. I have medical proof that this happened to me, yet I still questioned it. So in the healing process, as I can sound, and I am this very outspoken woman, to remember that the fragile, vulnerable moments of questioning my own truth as I'm telling the truth is part of the process. That is what trauma is. That's what living with trauma is. So there is that. And one thing I do want to say that I think is a really important piece, and it speaks to this, is that we can live in trauma or we can live with trauma. And living in trauma for me was living with extreme anxiety, depression, hypervigilance. I got sober really young, but there was a time when substance use was a part of that, sleeplessness, all of the things that, kind of clump together in this traumatic experience, all of the complex PTSD symptoms that are, we can make the list. And what it comes down to is the healing process has allowed me to live with trauma. So I have the experience of trauma being a part of my life, and it's woven into the tapestry of my life. And I appreciate that I have done so much healing around it so that it doesn't govern my life. And that's a huge piece for me that has been incredibly empowering.
Thank you for that. That's a really clear description of what it's like to go through some kind of healing process. It doesn't go away, but it definitely, when you're living with it, you have a place for it. You kind of have a place to put it, I guess is the way to describe it. Whereas when you're in it, there's no control. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, there's just, I didn't have a sense of agency. I didn't have a sense of, I am a participant in my life. I felt like a passenger in my life.
Exactly. So it's the trauma's controlling you as opposed to you controlling or getting a handle on the memories and the way it impacts you, that kind of thing, I think. So you went through the legal process. Was it a civil suit or was it what? Sounds like there's a big lawsuit.
Yeah. So there was a civil suit with hundreds of women. There was also a criminal suit happening soon after that.
From the LA. Okay.
Yeah. In the LA area. And I was already in process with the civil suit, and I was asked if I wanted to be part of the process with the criminal suit. And I knew people who were part of the process in the criminal suit. And I decided I'm already in this, and it is so intense that to pile on another piece is going to be I'm already feeling like this is impacting my life in such a deeply tremendous way. And I have kids and I have a life to live. I have a job I've got to show up for. Like, how do I do this in a practical way? So I chose to stay with where I was and not pursue the criminal, knowing that the criminal suit had a very strong group of people behind it. And so I had discussions about it, really contemplated that. And there were people who came to me and shared their stories with me of what happened to them, what Dr. Heaps did to them, who said, I cannot speak about this. I can't call an attorney and talk about this at all. And so knowing that those who did file the suits individually and then press charges and everything that happened, each one of us, who knows how many women behind us sort of saying like, thank you for doing what not in a position to do. Who knows how many?
Yeah. And was there an opportunity that, like in the case at USC, was there an opportunity for survivors to be part of the class action so they didn't have to be named, or was it only individuals filing suits?
There were individuals filing suits. There was a potential class action, and people were encouraged to opt out of that so they could have their individual cases and not kind of end up bundling together in a class action.
Right.
That was the preferred way to handle it.
Okay. And for our listeners who don't know the difference, just quickly, in a case such as this, where there are many, many survivors, even just a few, they can work with attorneys and file as a class, which is basically a group, and file a case. We often hear these in environmental cases too, where a community sues a polluter, for example. But then the money, whatever money's awarded, gets distributed among all the plaintiffs. Whereas if you file an individual suit, you might end up with more money in the end, though it's very stressful either way.
Right. And also, yes to all of that. And there's a reduction of kind of personal control over the suit. You're clumped together. So while the compensatory piece is something to consider, it's also could be a lot. And I'm not an attorney, so all of this, that's my disclaimer, but it's from what my understanding is, it can also be a lot longer, a lot more tedious, time consuming. So it has its place and it has its risks to be part of a class action. And it's good information to have if there are a large number who are all, looking at a potential defendant and saying, hey, he did this to me. And we see a lot of this with Me Too, right? What's happened since in the medical world, in the entertainment industry, wherever it may be. So it's important to just know that as an individual in an individual lawsuit, you do have a little bit more potential empowerment in that place. just from my experience.
Okay. Thank you for further information there. That's helpful.
You've shared a lot of things with us today, but is there one big take-home message that you would like our listeners to get from your episode today?
Thank you so much. I would love to really kind of imagine that we're all standing together and with a common thread, but even to envision that thread, whatever your favorite color is, and imagine that it runs through all of us, this beautiful silky thread that runs through all of our stories, all of our experiences, all of the deeply harmful and difficult feelings that we experience after being abused. That as we move through this, whether it's ever discussed or you ever walk into a therapist's office or seek out any kind of formal healing, that yes, you are alone in your experience and you are not alone in the healing experience of knowing that we're connected and that there's a possibility of healing, knowing that you've got the strength of other people and that thread running through.
Fantastic. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for that.
I want to thank our listeners for joining us. And I want to thank Julie for an incredible interview and sharing so much with our listeners today. And of course, for our listeners, if you are looking for any resources, even legal help, you can find that on the Take Back the Night website, and you could reach out to us there as well.
Yes. Thank you, Julie, so much. This is a wonderful conversation.
Thank you both so much. And yeah, I really, really appreciate it. It was an honor to be here today.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you for joining another episode of the Dear Katie podcast. We look forward to welcoming all of our survivors, supporters for another episode in the coming week. Please continue to take good care of yourself. Together, we will shatter the silence and end the violence.